The Pro Box one.
Yenye mahakama. Ako na kamera dito. Bana.
Stand with Albert. This was not their plan. Their plan was to air out their voices, but not this one.
Where are you?
Hapa umeogopa moto.
Useme chomeka. The best.
Hawa watu wengine
kitu wakaenda bio. Kasongo,
Mr. Ruto want to kill us. Thank you.
Very good. Simple. Kona اسمه hivyo.
Tunaomba tusikizwe. Enough is enough. Vijana wanauliwa ovyo ovyo. Badala ya polisi kuwazingira na kuwapea wao wanaua. Tumekuja kwa amani. So kama tumekuja kwa amani, mbona tusije vita? Mbona tupigwe marisasi? Ya ili peace.
Na sitafadhali wallahi. Unatuwaya nini? Na bado. Hii ndio mwanzo. Mwisho bado. Toke! Toke! Wewe.
partner. Haya nyaonya nyewe. Hata yeye bwana wenye si polisi. Mwana wenzi video kama ameweka kiboko ni huyu.
Work together. I was alone at some point. Okay. I was with Ethan. Okay. Oh, right. I think that's it. I think, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks. Okay, cool. I'm not sure. Okay. Let me get to the office car.
Hai, boss. Habari yako?
Sio leo baba, sio leo. Hey, I need to come down. I need to change my outfit. I can't hear. I want to come down. Call the guest. Nani huko?
Wamefunga. Unaenda wapi? Uko kwa baki? Sawa.
Hello, I'm Lucy Hockings. From the BBC World Service, this is The Global Story. This week, economic warfare broke out between the world's two biggest superpowers. President Trump announced a new tariff, essentially a tax, on Chinese goods coming into the US. And now Beijing has hit back. So can anyone really win a trade war? And what will the impact be on the rest of the world? With me today is Ritika Gupta, who is our North America business correspondent, joining us from New York, and the BBC World Service Asia Pacific editor, Michael Bristow. Well, if there's one thing we know about Donald Trump, it's that he loves tariffs.
The word tariff, properly used, is a beautiful word. One of the most beautiful words I've ever heard. It's music to my ears. I always say tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary.
They are at the heart of his economic plan for the United States. During his first term and also throughout the presidential campaign, he was very clear. He thinks tariffs are going to help make America and American people richer. And he also thinks that they're a useful tool in helping to get other countries to do exactly what he wants. Before we go any further, though, I think, Ritika, we need to cover some basics. Like, what exactly is a tariff?
Lucy, a tariff is a tax on imported goods from foreign countries. So Trump had proposed a 25% tax on Canada and Mexico, which have now been paused. But as an example, say you had a product that was worth $4, that would result in a $1 additional charge. So the total product costing some $5 or so.
President Trump repeatedly says that a tariff is a tax on a foreign country. He said that time and time again. Is that true?
No, it's not necessarily the country that pays for the tariff. It's the importing business that typically pays that extra charge. However, many economists have warned that these costs will be passed on to the American consumer because your businesses, your Walmarts, your Targets, for instance, may be facing margin pressure. So ultimately, it'll be the consumer that pays. And that shows up again on their receipts when they go into their big box chain stores.
So although there's been a lot of talk about the negative impacts of tariffs, for the Trump administration, there has been one big success already this week. When Donald Trump threatened to impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico, he said it was largely because of concerns about border security. Now, both Mexico and Canada have made big commitments to increase security at their borders. So, Ritika, can this be seen as a big win then for the use of tariffs?
In some ways, Lucy, it's worked. He showed in some ways the kind of the art of negotiating a deal because, as you say, Canada and Mexico did cede to Trump's demands when it came to adding extra border security. But there's also the US trading off too in some ways, and many experts have said that you didn't need necessarily the threat of tariffs to get some of those things done. And it also does cause concern and uncertainty about tit for tat and the escalation of a global trade war as well. And that's what many experts and economists have been warning are the dangers of this.
The biggest target of Trump's tariffs so far, though, has been China, and economists are worried that we could be on the brink now of a real trade war between China and the US. This isn't a new war, though, because President Trump began this economic war with China during his first term when he was in office. Mickey, why does Donald Trump see China as such an economic threat?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's not necessarily
I know you want a home that's more than just bricks and mortar, right? Or maybe just buy a cozy nest. Our mortgage finance is the key to turning
There
those
is
dreams.
need to undertake a critical evaluation of the costing of examination, assess the sustainability of the program in view of the prevailing fiscal constraints, and explore optimal options for delivering national examinations in order to ensure economy and value for money in public spending. Mr. Speaker, a key consideration is the merits of public funding of examination fees for all primary and secondary school candidates, including those from well-off households, as opposed to targeting the vulnerable students in our schools. We should also explore options of making the exercise of delivering national examinations simple and affordable without compromising the credibility of the exercise. To this end, the National Treasury is in consultations with the Ministry of Education on how best to achieve this at a minimal cost possible, including evaluating possible cost-sharing mechanisms. Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to ensuring access to quality education for all children. In this regard, I assure the public and the 2025 examination candidate of our commitment to provide adequate funding for 2025 national examinations. On the fiscal policy framework, Mr. Speaker, the implementation of 2024-2025 budget has faced notable challenges, primarily following the withdrawal of the Finance Bill of 2024. Its withdrawal, alongside the associated public demonstrations, adversely affected economic activity and disrupted business operations across the country, compounding the fiscal pressures facing the government already. In response, the government undertook a revision of the fiscal framework through Supplementary Estimate Number 1 in August 2024. This revision reflected a lower revenue base following the preliminary outcomes of financial year 2023-24, while also addressing immediate cash flow constraints. These adjustments were critical to ensuring the continuity of public service delivery. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the mid-year economic disruptions, the budget execution has been further constrained by shortfalls in revenue and emerging expenditure pressures. Notably, the implementation of the collective bargaining agreements and funding requirements under the new university education financing model have placed significant demands on the available fiscal space. These challenges have led to cash flow pressures and a buildup of pending obligations, necessitating careful fiscal management and reprioritization. To address these evolving dynamics, the government prepared supplementary budget estimates to accommodate revenue shortfalls experienced during a balanced mix of tax policy and administrative measures aimed at significantly boosting revenue collection. As part of the process, the government is focused on broadening the tax base while reducing the burden of compliance. In this regard, we have prioritized sectors such as the digital economy, agribusiness, and small and medium enterprises in tax, education, and outreach programs. In addition, Mr. Speaker, Kenya Revenue Authority continues to embrace modern technology solutions for efficient access to tax services. This program enhances service delivery, improves transparency, and strengthens our ability to detect tax evasion. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Revenue Authority is what we call auto-populated VAT returns for seamless web and application program interface. 3, electronic rental income tax system that has enabled transparent rental income declarations, and 4, forecourt electronic tax invoice management system integration in the petroleum sector, connecting fuel dispensers to point-of-sale terminals. This enables real-time transmission of sales data to electronic tax invoice management system, simplifying compliance and ensuring greater transparency in fuel transactions. Mr. Speaker, these solutions are more than just tech updates. They are the drivers of economic empowerment and accountability. Indeed, by simplifying tax procedures, developing user-friendly digital platforms, and providing on-the-ground support, Kenya Revenue Authority is nurturing a fair and inclusive tax culture, one that enables businesses to thrive while meeting their obligations. Mr. Speaker, building on the progress made, our focus in the financial year 2025-26 and over the medium term will be to strengthen domestic resource mobilization through the following key initiatives. First, continue with the implementation of the national tax policy and the medium-term revenue strategy to provide a consistent and predictable framework for tax administration and policy formulation. Second, continue with the automation of tax administration processes to improve the overall efficiency of the tax system. And third, enhancing non-tax revenue collection by enabling ministries, departments, and agencies to generate income through the services they provide to the public. Mr. Speaker, as part of our broader fiscal reform agenda, the government is undertaking targeted tax administrative reforms aimed at strengthening our revenue base and promoting inclusive economic growth. These reforms will focus on 3 key objectives. First, reducing tax expenditures. Mr. Speaker, tax expenditures stood at 3.38% of GDP in 2023. To unlock additional revenue for national government, we must reduce that tax expenditure. Second, expanding the tax base and enhancing compliance, in line with the goals set out in the medium-term revenue strategy. And third, streamlining the tax structure to encourage domestic production, attract investment, and stimulate economic growth. Mr. Speaker, allow me to speak to improving efficiency of public expenditure. Here, Mr. Speaker, in our continued effort to ensure prudent fiscal management, the government will sustain and deepen measures aimed at strengthening expenditure control and enhancing the efficiency and effectiveness of public spending. To this end, the government will implement a series of targeted actions, which include: 1, utilization of the launched end-to-end procurement system to maximize value for money, enhance efficiency and transparency in public procurement processes. 2, rolling out of a human resource management system across all national government ministries and departments, as well as county government, to support better management of the public wage bill. 3, scaling up the use of the public-private partnerships framework for commercially viable projects to attract private sector participation in public service delivery, what we call PPP. 4, improving the public service pension administration through rolling out the pension management information system. And 5, fast-tracking governance reforms in state corporations to strengthen accountability, efficiency, and financial sustainability. I want to now turn to revenue projections. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, based on the outlined policy measures and structural reforms, total revenue collections, including appropriation in aid, for the financial year 2025-26, budget is projected to be at 3,321.8 billion, equivalent to 17.2% of GDP. Of this amount, ordinary revenue is projected at Kenya shillings 2,754.7 billion, which is equivalent to 14.3% of GDP. And ministerial appropriation in aid, or if you like, non-tax revenue, is projected at 567 billion shillings. Grants are projected at 46.9 billion, or 0.2% of the GDP. Having talked about revenue projections, let me now turn to expenditure projections. Mr. Speaker, total expenditure in the financial year 2025-2026 budget is projected at 4,291.9 billion, equivalent to 22.3% of GDP. And of this, recurrent expenditures will amount to 3,134.4 billion, equivalent to 16.3% of GDP. And development expenditures, including allocations to domestic and foreign finance projects, contingency fund, and equalization fund, will amount to 693.2 billion, equivalent to 3.6% of GDP. Total allocation to county governments is projected at 474.9 billion, of which equitable share is 405.1 billion. Fiscal deficit and financing. Mr. Speaker, the resultant fiscal deficit, including grants, is projected at 923.2 billion, which is equivalent to 4.8% of GDP, down from the estimated 997.5 billion, or 5.7% of GDP in financial year 2024-25. The fiscal deficit for the financial year 25-26 budget will be financed by net external borrowing of 287.7 billion, equivalent to 1.5% of GDP, and net domestic borrowing of 635.5 billion, which is equivalent to 3.3% of GDP. Public debt management. Mr. Speaker, Kenya's public debt is projected to remain with these sustainable levels over the medium term. In present value terms, the debt to GDP is projected to progressively decline from 63% in 2024 towards the debt anchor of 55% or minus 5% of GDP plus or minus 5% of GDP for 2028. To support the projected decline in debt levels, the National Treasury will continue implementing various reforms as guided by the medium-term debt management strategy, including liability management operations, continue pursuing use of concessional loans from multilateral, bilateral, and limited commercial sources such as international bond issuances. Additionally, reforms targeted to support domestic market development will eventually reduce the cost of public debt while sustaining fiscal consolidation efforts to ensure debt remains within sustainable levels. Further, the government will explore emerging funding instruments such as debt swaps, diaspora bonds, sustainability-linked bonds, and environmental, social, and governance debt instruments to fund budget deficit and manage public debt. This strategic approach will not only diversify our financing options, but also strengthen international partnerships and promote sustainable growth. Mr. Speaker and honorable members, the government is keen on sustaining transparency and improving efficiency on public debt service. To this end, the National Treasury is in the process of integrating the Commonwealth Meridian Debt Management System with the Integrated Financial Management Information System, IFMIS, and the core banking systems of Central Bank of Kenya. On public-private partnerships framework, Mr. Speaker, the government continues to strengthen the role of public-private partnerships in financing our development agenda. Currently, there are 32 PPP projects at various stages which are targeted to mobilize 70 billion shillings in the financial year 2025-2026 through private investments in priority sectors, including energy, water, housing, health, and transport. So, Mr. Speaker, to enhance transparency and accountability at all stages of project life cycle while implementing PPP, I recently issued a circular on mandatory disclosure requirements for all privately initiated proposals. This measure is part of our broader effort to strengthen the integrity of the PPP program and to ensure that private sector participation in public projects fosters public trust. Mr. Speaker, the National Treasury in May 2025 received the final report of the Committee of Experts on leveraging local financial markets for investment into public-private partnerships and implementation. The committee recommended the establishment and operationalization of PPP Implementation Trust Fund as the central mechanism for enhancing private sector participation in PPPs, particularly through institutional and retail entities. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the PPP regulations under consideration by Parliament will enhance clarity around PPP processes, thereby enhancing efficiency and project delivery. This will also unlock a pipeline of county-level specific PPP projects in partnership with development partners. In strengthening public finance management reforms, number one is migration to accrual accounting. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen management of public resources, all government ministries, departments, and agencies adopted accrual accounting as of 1st July 2024. The first accrual-based financial statements are expected for the financial year ending 30th June 2025, which is a few days away. The accrual accounting will enable the government to account for all assets and liabilities, including all government assets. Second, Treasury single account. Mr. Speaker, to enhance cash management, the migration of ministries, departments, and agencies to the Treasury single account is progressing well. The Central Bank of Kenya is scheduled to go live with its T24 system upgrade in July 2025. This upgraded platform will support the implementation of Treasury single account core functionalities and facilitate the National Treasury to roll out the key elements of the Treasury single account system. Concurrently, the National Treasury is on track to onboard county governments in 2026. The final phase will involve integrating all remaining national government entities into the Treasury single account by financial year 26-27. Third, zero-based budgeting. Mr. Speaker, to reorient the budgeting and expenditure framework, The government adopted the zero-based budgeting approach while finalizing the financial year 25-26 budget. To implement this approach, the National Treasury developed a budget costing tool that was integrated into the IFMIS budget module for the national government. The zero-based budgeting approach compels all ministries, departments, and agencies to justify expenditures from scratch, thus ensuring resources are allocated to high-impact activities. It promotes transparency, efficiency, by requiring clear justification and critical assessment of spending. Mr. Speaker, I know this statement is long. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, you know Kenya is not a small economy. We are number 6 in Africa. And we have jumped over Ethiopia. So you can't have a 3-pager statement for an economy as big as Kenya.
Gone without apology. Gone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
So far, so good.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I'm now turning to resource allocation so that honorable members can appreciate, and the Kenyan people, where we have allocated the limited resources that we have. Mr. Speaker, now let me highlight the government spending priorities for financial year 25-26. Expenditures for the financial year 25-26 will consolidate the gains realized under the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, with special focus placed on promoting investment in core pillars and their enablers through a value chain approach. Number 1, under agricultural transformation and inclusive growth, which is the first pillar. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to transform the agriculture sector by increasing productivity in key value chains, such as fisheries and aquaculture, horticulture, food crops, livestock, and rangeland development. The government will scale up support to farmers through input financing, subsidies, and extension services. This will move the country from food deficit to food surplus, reduce reliance on food imports, and revamp export crops. Mr. Speaker, in this respect, I have proposed an allocation of 47.6 billion for various programs under this sector, despite the fact that agriculture is largely devolved. This includes 8 billion for the fertilizer subsidy program, 10.2 billion for the National Agricultural Value Chain Development Project, 800 million for small-scale irrigation and value addition project, 1.2 billion for food security and crop diversification project, and 5.8 billion for the food systems resilience project. Mr. Speaker, to promote livestock production, I have proposed Kenya shillings 2.3 billion for de-risking, inclusion, and value enhancement of pastoral economies programs. 1.6 million Kenya shillings for Kenya Livestock Commercialization Program, and 280 million for the Livestock Value Chain Support Project. I have also proposed Kenya shillings 340 million for the development leather industrial park at Kenania. Mr. Speaker, to support the growth of blue economy, I have proposed a total of 8.2 billion to the blue economy and fisheries subsector. This includes 2.3 billion for aquaculture business development project, 2.4 billion to the Kenya Marine Fisheries and Socio-Economic Development Project, and 500 million for the Kabonyo Fisheries and Aquaculture Training Center. Mr. Speaker, to raise agricultural productivity and enhance resilience to climate change risks in targeted smallholder farming and pastoral communities, I've proposed an allocation of Kenya shillings 318 million towards an ending drought emergencies project and 1.3 billion to resilience for food and the nutrition security program in Horn of Africa project. Mr. Speaker, the government is also committed to land reforms to address historical inequalities, promote equitable access, and ensure sustainable land management. To this end, I have proposed a sum of 3.8 billion for settlement of the landless. I have also proposed 1.1 billion for processing and registration of title deeds, another 712 million for digitization of land registries, another 200 million for georeferencing of land parcels, and 220 million for construction of land registries to safeguard legitimacy of land ownership. The next pillar is transforming the micro, small, and medium enterprises economy. Mr. Speaker, the government recognizes the challenge of accessing affordable credit by most micro, small, and medium enterprises, and Kenyans at the bottom of the pyramid. To address this challenge, I have proposed an additional allocation of 300 million to the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund, to scale up access to credit for households and MSMEs. I have also proposed an additional 308 million for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, 550 million for the Center for Entrepreneurship Project, and 1.3 billion for Rural Kenya Financial Inclusion Facility. And housing and settlement, which is the other pillar. Mr. Speaker, the government is committed to facilitating the construction of decent, safe, and affordable houses for Kenyans. Through the affordable housing program, the government is creating jobs for the youth, directly in the construction sector and indirectly through the production and supply of building products. To continue supporting this initiative, I have proposed an allocation of 128.3 billion for the housing, urban development, and public works subsector. This includes 13.4 billion under the Kenya Urban Program, 64.5 billion for construction of affordable housing units, 10.5 billion for construction of social housing units, and 16.5 billion for social and fiscal infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations to the housing, urban development, and public works interventions include 7.2 billion shillings for the Kenya Informal Settlement Improvement Project Phase 2, 3.5 billion for the construction of housing units for the National Police and the Kenya Prison, 500 million for building climate resilience of the Urban Poor Program, 184 million for construction of footbridges, and 454 million targeted to support construction of county headquarters. Mr. Speaker, to ensure the safety of Kenyans through compliance with building codes and standards, as well as other industry regulations, I have proposed an allocation of 2.6 billion for the regulation and development of the construction industry. I am aware members are aware, I know members are aware of the challenges we have had where collapsed buildings kill many, many Kenyans as a result of carelessness of various developers. Let me turn to universal health coverage. Mr. Speaker, access to quality and affordable health care through the universal health coverage program is central to this government. Towards this end, Mr. Speaker, I have proposed an allocation of Kenya shillings 138.1 billion, up from 123 billion in the current year's budget, to the health sector to support various activities and programs. This includes 6.2 billion for universal health coverage, coordination, and management, 13.1 billion for primary health care, and that is up from 7.1 billion in the current year, and 430 million to provide medical cover for the orphans, elderly, and disabled persons in our society. Mr. Speaker, to lower cases of HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis, and enhance vaccines and immunization program in the country, I have proposed 17.3 billion for the Global Fund and Kenya shillings 4.6 billion for vaccines and immunization programs, respectively. Mr. Speaker, to enhance early diagnosis and management of cancer and reduce the burden of treatment of chronic and critical illnesses among Kenyans, I have proposed an allocation of 8 billion to the Emergencies, Chronic and Critical Illnesses Fund to be managed by SHA, and this has moved from 5 billion shillings in the current budget. 1 billion for construction of a cancer center at Kisii Level 5 Hospital, 100 million to strengthen cancer management in Kenyatta National Hospital, and 100 million for expansion of comprehensive cancer treatment at Kenyatta University Teaching, Referral and Research Hospital. Mr. Speaker, to improve health service delivery, I have also proposed a sum of 42.4 billion for our referral hospitals, including Kenyatta National Hospital, Moi Teaching and Referral Hostel, Kenyatta University Teaching Referral and Research Hostel, Mwai Kibaki Teaching and Referral Hostel in Othaya, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hostel in Kisumu, and Mathare National Teaching and Referral Hostel. Other locations include Kenya shillings 1.3 billion for the construction of Kenyatta National Hostel, Burns and Pediatrics Center. Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed 5.2 billion for Kenya Medical Supplies Agency to recapitalize it, 2.7 billion for the Kenya Medical Research Institute, 500 million for procurement of family planning and reproductive health commodities, and 300 million for procurement of equipment at the National Blood Transfusion Services. Further, to strengthen the capacity of medical personnel, I have also proposed an allocation of 4.3 billion for medical interns, 3.2 billion for community health promoters, 303 million for training of health personnel, and 8.9 billion for the Kenya Medical Training Centers, KMTCs. On digital superhighway and creative economy, which is the other pillar of the better principle, the government continues to invest in digital superhighway to improve ICT infrastructure and expand internet access nationwide. The creative industry is a significant source of employment, particularly for the youth, and has the potential to address high unemployment rates through promotion of music, theater, graphic design, digital animation, fashion and craft, among others. Mr. Speaker, to support growth in the digital superhighway, I have proposed an allocation of 12.7 billion to fund initiatives in the information, communication, technology sector. Specifically, this proposed allocation includes 2.3 billion shillings for the construction of Kenya Advanced Institute of Science and Technology at Konza Technopolis, 3.7 billion for Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Project, and 333.2 million for government shared services, 382 million for the digital superhighway, 689 million for the establishment of digital hubs, and 750 million for maintenance and rehabilitation of national optic fiber backbone infrastructure. In order to fast-track the development of the Konza Technopolis city, I have proposed an allocation of 3.1 billion for Konza data center and smart city facilities. The government is also committed to enhance transparency, accountability, and efficiency in public procurement. I have, in this regard, proposed an allocation of 700 million for rolling out the implementation of the electronic government procurement system, what we call EGP, or EGP, EG procurement. Other key allocations to critical sectors supporting better include the following: investing in critical infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, the government will continue to invest in transportation networks, including roads, railways, and air travel, to reduce travel time and logistic costs, making markets more accessible and facilitating the movement of goods and people. Towards this end, I have proposed an allocation of 217.3 billion for development of roads across the country. This includes 30 billion to support construction of new roads and bridges, 70.8 billion for rehabilitation of roads, because we have so many long, the length of roads is so long that we have to maintain them and rehabilitate. And 115.6 billion for road maintenance. Actually, this 115 billion is more than the 85 million that we have in the current budget by 30 billion for maintenance of our roads. Mr. Speaker, to expand railway transport and its infrastructure, I have proposed an allocation of 38 billion shillings. I have also proposed an allocation of 450 million for the Kenya ferry ramp in Mombasa, 331 million for Nairobi bus rapid transport project, and 298.7 million for promotion of e-mobility projects. To facilitate movement of goods and people in our inland waters, I have also proposed an additional 110.4 million for acquisition of ferries for Lake Victoria. Mr. Speaker, to scale up production of reliable and affordable energy, I have also proposed an allocation of 62.8 billion to cater for key energy interventions. This includes 31.6 billion for the national grid system, 16.3 billion for rural electrification, 11.6 billion for development of geothermal energy, 2.1 billion for alternative energy technologies, and 743 million for development of nuclear energy. Let me now talk about improving education outcomes. Mr. Speaker, the education sector plays a vital role in economic development by enhancing human capital, driving innovation, and improving productivity. To this end, the government continues to invest in education to raise learning outcomes and ensure equal opportunities for all. Mr. Speaker, I have proposed a total allocation of 702.7 billion to the education sector, which is almost 28% of our entire budget. This will include an allocation of 387.2 billion to the Teacher Service Commission. The allocation for TSC will include 7.2 billion for recruitment of intern teachers and 980 for capacity building of teachers on competence-based education curriculum. Further, I have proposed an allocation of 7 billion for free primary education, 28.9 billion for junior and secondary school capitation, and 51.9 billion for free day secondary education. In addition, Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed an allocation of 5.9 billion for administering the national examinations, 3 billion for the school feeding program, and 7.2 billion for the recruitment of intern teachers. I think that one I'd already mentioned, that's a repeat, and 4 billion for the technical, vocational, educational training and entrepreneurship project. Mr. Speaker, to enhance infrastructure development and provide a safe learning environment in our schools, I have proposed an allocation of 1.7 billion for primary and secondary schools infrastructure and 1.4 billion for construction and equipping of technical training institutes and vocational training centers. In addition, I have proposed 13.3 billion for the Kenya Primary Education Equity in Learning Program and 2.3 billion for the Kenya Secondary School Quality Improvement Project. Mr. Speaker, other proposed allocations to the education sector include 993 million for research, science, technology, and innovation, 41.5 billion to the Higher Education Loans Board for provision of loans to university and TVET students, and this has increased from 35 billion to 41.5 billion for health. Another 16.9 billion for scholarship for university students, and 7.7 billion capitation and scholarship for TVET students. In supporting manufacturing for job creation, Mr. Speaker, to continue promoting local industries, I have proposed an allocation of 18 billion under various implementing ministries, departments, and agencies. Out of this, 4.5 billion will support establishment of county integrated agro-industrial parks in various counties. 2.8 billion for supporting access to finance and enterprise recovery, what we call SAFER project. 602 million for a development of Athi River Textile Hub. 705 million for establishment of flagship export processing zones hubs. 504 million for development of special economic zone textile park in Naivasha. And 798 million for Kenya jobs and economic transformation. Mr. Speaker, in order to revitalize and maximize the benefits from our cash crops, I have proposed 2 billion for coffee cherry revolving fund and another 2 billion for coffee debt waivers. This is up from the 3 billion that was allocated to this subsector in the last financial year's budget. Another 1.5 billion for sugar sector reforms and 120 million for modernization and revitalization of cotton ginneries, and 245 million for horticulture produce compliance enhancement project. Mr. Speaker, to support local production and processing of edible oils, I have proposed an allocation of 300 million for the National Edible Oil Crops Promotion Project. Mr. Speaker, to enhance milk processing, I have proposed an allocation of 400 million for excess milk mop-up and 150 million for modernization of milk processing factories in Runyenjes and Narok. Mr. Speaker, to equip our youth with essential training and internship opportunities in trade and industry, I have proposed an allocation of 330 million for the Kenya Industry and Entrepreneurship Project, another 500 million for the construction of industrial research laboratories, and 109 million for constituency industrial development centers. Now let me speak to improving security. Mr. Speaker, A stable and secure environment fosters investment, trade, and overall economic growth. In this regard, I have proposed an allocation of 202.3 billion for defense, another 125.7 billion for the National Police Service, and 51.4 billion for the National Intelligence Service, another 32.5 billion for internal security and national administration, and 38.1 billion for prison services. I have also proposed an additional allocation of 10 billion to cater for leasing of police motor vehicles and 3.6 billion for police modernization program. Mr. Speaker, to combat crime and enhance administration of justice, I have proposed 1.2 billion for construction and modernization of national forensic facilities. Now, let me turn to protecting the vulnerable groups in our society. Mr. Speaker, social protection services are crucial for building more equitable and resilient societies by reducing poverty, inequality, and vulnerability, as well as promoting economic growth and social cohesion. I have in this regard proposed an allocation of 41.4 billion in this budget to protect the vulnerable members of our society and promote affirmative action. This is increasing from 33 billion in the current financial year's budget. Out of this allocation, 25.1 billion will cater for cash transfers to the elderly persons. And again, this has moved from 18 billion, so it has increased by 7 billion. 8.9 billion for cash transfers to orphans and vulnerable children. Again, that's a jump of 1 billion more. And 1.5 billion for cash transfers to persons living with disability. Again, this has been increased from 1.19 billion. Mr. Speaker, the proposed allocations also includes 3.9 billion for the Kenya Hunger Safety Net Program, 450 million for the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya. In addition, there is 600 million which will go to the Child Welfare Society of Kenya, 100 million for the Presidential Bursary for Orphans, 180 million for the Street Families Rehabilitation Trust Fund, and 90 million for the National Albinism Support Program, and finally, 90 million for the National Autism Support Program. On equity, poverty reduction, women and youth empowerment. Mr. Speaker, unemployment remains one of the most persistent and challenging issues facing the country today. The challenge is not only about job creation, but also bringing the critical gap between education and employment and developing relevant skills for the modern economy. In order to empower the youth and support businesses owned by youth and women and to promote development in the constituencies, I have proposed 105.6 billion for these initiatives. This allocation includes 10 billion, I have proposed 105.6 billion, not million, for these initiatives. This allocation includes 10 billion for the National Youth Service, NYS, 3.6 billion to National Youth Opportunity Towards Advancement, what is famously known as NYOTA, and Kenya shillings 318 million for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. In addition, I have proposed 990 million for film development services. Mr. Speaker, to further empower our women and girls, I have proposed 353 million for the Women Enterprise Fund, 940 million for provision of sanitary towels to school-going girls, 254 million for strengthening prevention and response to gender-based violence in Kenya, 110 million for eradication of female genital mutilation, and 4 billion for the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, otherwise known as NGAF. Mr. Speaker, to promote regional equity, reduce poverty, and enhance social development across the country, I have proposed 58.8 billion for the National Government Constituency Development Fund, 9.6 billion for the Equalization Fund to finance programs in identified marginal areas or marginalized areas, and another 15.9 billion for the Kenya Devolution Support Program number 2. To stimulate tourism growth, sports, culture, recreational and arts, Mr. Speaker, in order to harness national pride, empower our youth and position Kenya as a regional beacon of talent and heritage, I have proposed an allocation of 29.7 billion to support sports, culture, and recreation as well as tourism. This proposed allocation includes 13.5 billion for the Sports, Arts, and Social Development Fund, 2.3 billion to establish an automation and digitization system for the sports registrar. 241 million for the anti-doping agency of Kenya to make Kenya remain competitive in the athletics and other sports. 402 million for Sports Kenya. 245 million for the Kenya Academy of Sports. 8.2 billion for the tourism fund. And 4.8 billion for tourism promotion fund. On environmental protection, water and natural resources, Mr. Speaker, to safeguard natural ecosystems, ensure sustainable water use, and tackle the impact of climate change, I have proposed an allocation of 10.7 billion for forest resources conservation and management, 1.6 billion for forest research and development, 3.7 billion for environment management and protection, 11.5 billion for the Kenya Financing Locally Led Climate Action Project, which is known as FLOCA, 1.6 billion for meteorological service, and 13.2 billion for wildlife security, conservation and management. Another 953 million for wildlife research and development. In addition, I have also proposed 1.1 billion for human wildlife conflict compensation and 950 million for wildlife insurance. Mr. Speaker, I have also proposed an allocation of 26.8 billion for water and sewerage infrastructure development. Out of this, 16.5 billion for water resources management and 1.9 billion for water storage and flood control. In addition, I have also proposed 15 billion for irrigation and land reclamation and 266 million for water harvesting and storage for irrigation. In order to improve governance and sustaining the fight against corruption, Mr. Speaker, to enhance good governance, intensify the fight against corruption, and entrench integrity and accountability in public service delivery, I have proposed Kenya shillings 4.5 billion for the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, 4.5 billion for the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, 5.3 billion to the State Law Office, and 8.7 billion for the Office of the Auditor General. In addition, Mr. Speaker, to enhance the oversight and legislative role of Parliament, I propose an allocation of 48 billion for Parliament. To enable administration of justice, I also propose an allocation of 27.8 billion for the judiciary. Now let me turn to allocation to county governments. Mr. Speaker, to support devolution, county governments will receive 405.1 billion in the financial year 2025-2026 as an equitable share of revenue raised nationally, an increase of 17.6 billion from Kenya shillings 387.4 billion in financial year 24-25. The 405.1 billion represents 25.8% of the most recently audited revenues for financial year 2020-2021, way higher than the minimum of 15% prescribed in Article 203(2) of the Constitution. In order to ensure food and nutrition security, infrastructure development, improved water and sanitation systems, among others, county governments will receive an additional 69.8 billion as additional allocations. Equalization Fund. Mr. Speaker, to support implementation projects in the marginalized areas, 7.85 billion has been proposed as an allocation to the Equalization Fund in the financial year 2025-2026, and an additional 2.74 billion to settle outstanding arrears owed to the fund. Mr. Speaker, now allow me to speak to measures to enhance county government's own source revenue. Mr. Speaker, the own source revenue policy recommended the development of a national framework legislation to regulate the introduction of taxes, fees, and charges by county governments. Consequently, the National Treasury and other stakeholders developed the County Government Revenue Raising Process Bill, which is currently before Parliament for consideration. Again, I urge the Honourable House to consider the bill and prioritize its enactment. Mr. Speaker, now let me turn to taxation measures. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to tax policy measures supporting the financial year 2025-2026. These measures include proposals contained in the Finance Bill 2025, as well as the customs duty measures agreed upon by the East African Community Ministers for Finance during the East African Community pre-budget meeting held in May this year, which I personally attended. These measures are set to take effect from 1st July 2025. Mr. Speaker, the freedoms we enjoy in this country have not come easy. In the last couple of years, Kenyans have spoken clearly and loudly on the desired direction in development of policy and governance of taxation. In 2023, the minority side in Parliament, supported by the efforts of the then ODM chairman, protested against the Finance Act of 2023. Last year, Mr. Speaker, some provisions in the Finance Bill 2024 triggered protests across the country. These actions in the 2 years regrettably resulted in the loss of lives and destruction of property and adversely impacted economic lives of many. In the remembrance of our fellow Kenyans who lost their most precious lives during these protests, allow me, Mr. Speaker, that we observe a minute of silence in their remembrance.
Will you be upstanding?
May their souls continue resting in eternal peace. Thank you, honorable members. Mr. Speaker, no life should be lost and no property should be destroyed again. The message from Kenyans was clear. Since I took office at the National Treasury and Economic Planning, I assured Kenyans that we shall strive to reduce tax burden. In this respect, the Finance Bill of 2025 has neither proposed new taxes nor raised any tax rates. Instead, we have chosen to enhance tax revenue collection through administrative reforms by simplifying and streamlining tax laws to make them clearer and easier to implement, thereby by improving taxpayer compliance. The process also involves rationalization of tax expenditure to enhance equity and fairness. Mr. Speaker, the revenue foregone through tax incentives or tax expenditure has increased significantly, rising from Kenya shillings 393.1 billion, which is equivalent to 2.9% of GDP in 2022, to 510.6 billion, which is equivalent to 3.4% of GDP in 2023. To reverse this trend, the Finance Bill of 2025 proposes reforms to rationalize tax expenditures so as to promote equity, fairness, efficiency, and reduce distortions within the tax system. The proposed reforms are in line with the national tax policy and the medium-term revenue strategy, which this Honorable House passed. So, Mr. Speaker, from the proposed reforms, we expect to raise Kenya shillings 30 billion more as additional revenue. Mr. Speaker, customs measures agreed upon by East African Community Ministers during the pre-budget meeting are intended to protect our industries and ensure they access raw materials and inputs at affordable prices. The meeting allowed Kenya to import tea packaging materials at a lower duty rate of 10%. In addition, Kenya was granted an extension of duty remission to import wheat at the rate of 10%. These measures will support our wheat and tea farmers. Mr. Speaker, I will begin with the customs measures and later provide highlights on the proposed amendments of tax laws in the Finance Bill of 2025. On customs measures, to meet the local demand of rice, Kenya was allowed to extend the stay of application on the East African Community Common External Tariff and import rice at the rate of 35% or USD 200 per metric ton, whichever is higher, instead of the common external tariff rate of 75% or USD 345 per metric ton. Mindful of wheat farmers in Kenya, East African community ministers agreed on duty remission of wheat at a rate of 10% instead of the common external tariff rate of 35%, provided the millers who intend to import wheat under the duty remission must first purchase locally produced wheat. Mr. Speaker, to promote local assembly of telecommunication equipment, Kenya was granted an extension of duty remission on inputs for assembly of telecommunication devices, including mobile phones, laptops, and tablets. Mr. Speaker, in order to reduce the production cost of animal feeds, Kenya requested for an extension to import inputs for production of animal feeds duty-free under the East African Community Duty Remission Scheme, which was granted. We urge the producers of animal feeds to apply for the remission. Mr. Speaker, the leather sector is one of the priority value chains under BETA. To support local producers of leather and leather products, Kenya was allowed to extend the stay of application on the common external tariff rate and apply import duty rate of 35% on leather products. To promote tanneries to supply local manufacturers with high-quality leather, Kenya was allowed to import chemicals for leather processing under duty remission. Mr. Speaker, to support local assembly of transformers, which is critical to energy distribution, the East African community ministers approved Kenya's request for a tariff split on transformers to provide for a distinction between fully built and unassembled transformers. Currently, it is one line, tariff line, and it is very difficult for us to separate and incentivize either of them. So, Mr. Speaker, to support the local assemblers of cranes, Kenya was granted approval to import inputs for assembly of cranes duty-free under duty remission. Mr. Speaker, last year Kenya was granted a stay of application on the East African East African Community Common External Tariff to apply a higher duty rate ranging from 25 to 35% on certain types of paper used in manufacturing packaging materials. This action adversely affected exporters, particularly in tea sector. To address this, Kenya opted not to request for an extension of the stay of this common external tariff. And this decision will not affect local manufacturers of packaging materials, as they will continue importing raw materials under duty remission. So, Mr. Speaker, now let me speak to the Finance Bill of 2025. Let me now highlight some of the proposals contained in the proposed Finance Bill 2025 under Income Tax Act. Mr. Speaker, to enable faster recovery of investment by businesses on loose items such as utensils, linen, and industrial tools, the bill proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to allow for a full cost deduction of these items in the first year of purchase, as opposed to the current 3 years. This will improve cash flows of the relevant businesses. Mr. Speaker, we have noted increased tax disputes arising from audits carried on cross-border transactions. These disputes could have been avoided if the multinational companies had advanced pricing agreements with the commissioner at KRA. To address this gap, the bill is proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to empower the commissioner to enter into advanced pricing agreements with multinational companies. Mr. Speaker, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, passed in December last year, introduced the minimum top-up tax in line with the global best practices. But the Act inadvertently omitted the due date for payment of the tax, thus creating enforcement challenges. To address this, I have proposed an amendment to the Income Tax Act to clarify that the due date will be the end of the 4th month following the close of a company's accounting period. Mr. Speaker, again, the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, passed in December last year, exempted gratuity payments from income tax, actually pension and gratuity. However, the provision is not clear whether all gratuity, including from private pension schemes, is exempted from tax. In this respect, the bill is proposing to amend the Income Tax Act to clarify that all gratuity payments, whether from public or private sources, are exempt from tax. Mr. Speaker, to encourage wider participation in virtual asset transactions, especially among the youth, the bill proposes to reduce the digital asset tax rate from 3% to 1.5%. And Mr. Speaker, to ensure consistency and effective administration of the law, the bill proposes to amend the third schedule to the Income Tax Act to clarify that fringe benefit tax is payable by the employer at the corporate tax rate, and that withholding tax on qualifying dividends and qualifying interest are final tax. That is not clear in the current arrangement. And Mr. Speaker, under the current Income Tax Act, individuals with mortgages, and honorable members would be interested in listening to this. Mr. Speaker, under the current Income Tax Act, individuals with mortgages for purchasing or improving residential houses can claim tax relief on interest payment on the mortgage. However, those who take up a mortgage to construct their own residential houses are excluded from this relief. That is the law as it is today. To ensure fairness, the bill proposes to extend this benefit to interest on mortgages taken for construction of residential houses. This will support home ownership and align with the better pillar on affordable housing. Mr. Speaker, the current tax-free daily subsistence allowance of $2,000 for private sector employees on official duties outside their usual workplace is lower than that of the public sector employees. To enhance equity, the bill is proposing to increase the tax-free daily subsistence allowance for private sector employees from 2,000 to 10,000 shillings. Mr. Speaker, Kenya has an opportunity to strengthen its position as a regional financial hub. In this respect, the bill proposes amendment to the Income Tax Act to provide that companies certified by the Nairobi International Financial Center Authority, NIFCA, that invest new capital of at least $3 billion over a period of 3 years to pay a reduced corporate tax rate of 15% for the first 10 years and 20% for the subsequent 10 years. The companies qualifying for this will be required to employ Kenyans at senior management level. The startup companies that are certified by Nairobi International Financial Center Authority will enjoy a 15% tax rate for the first 3 years and 20% for the subsequent 4 years. And dividends earned by certified holding companies and regional headquarters will be exempted from tax provided that at least 250 million is reinvested annually in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, we have noted that some employees seek refunds from KRA on reliefs of deductions that ought to have been deducted by their employers. To address this challenge, the bill proposes to amend the Income Tax Act to make it mandatory for employers to consider all eligible tax reliefs and deductions when computing employees' income tax. Presently, employers are not compelled to deduct these reliefs in computing pay as you earn. Value-added tax. Mr. Speaker, while a supplier is required to issue a tax invoice at the point of sale, there is currently no definition of tax invoice under the VAT Act. This creates ambiguity on what constitutes a tax invoice. To resolve this ambiguity, the bill is proposing to amend the VAT Act to define a tax invoice. Mr. Speaker, to strengthen tax administration and enhance compliance, the bill proposes to require the issuance of tax invoices for all suppliers, whether taxable or exempt. This amendment will support better record keeping by taxpayers and facilitate the pre-population of returns. Mr. Speaker, to support business operations, the bill proposes to shorten the period for claiming refunds on bad debts from 3 years to 2 years, and to allow taxpayers to either request for a refund or offset it against future VAT liabilities. Mr. Speaker, again, entities in special economic zones currently benefit from VAT exemptions and zero rating, but there is no provision to recover tax when these benefits are misused or abused. To safeguard revenue and promote accountability, the bill proposes to recover VAT where exempted or zero-rated goods or services are used for purposes other than those intended. Mr. Speaker, to prevent leakages or revenue leakages, strengthen tax administration and promote equity across sectors. The bill proposes to move some zero-rated goods and services that are consumed locally to exempt status. Further, Mr. Speaker, some of the goods exempted from VAT have multiple uses, making it difficult to effectively monitor whether they are finally used for the intended purpose. In this respect, the bill proposes to amend the VAT Act to remove such exemptions. Under excise duty, Mr. Speaker, to minimize tax disputes relating to classification of locally produced accessible goods, the bill proposes an amendment to the Excise Duty Act to clarify that the East African Community Common External Tariff and its classification rules shall apply to all accessible goods, both imported and locally manufactured. Mr. Speaker, to streamline the processing of application for license to manufacture accessible goods by the Commissioner, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to require the Commissioner to provide feedback on the application within 14 working days from the date of receipt of all valid documents. Mr. Speaker, the Excise Duty Act provides for taxation of alcoholic beverages based on pure alcoholic content, which increased cost for producers using spirits over 90% alcohol content as raw materials from 356 shillings to about 1,000 shillings per litre. Since undenatured extra-neutral alcohol is a key input in the manufacturing of spirituous beverages, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to provide an excise duty rate of 500 shillings per litre for undenatured extra-neutral alcohol above 90% strength supplied to licensed spirituous beverage manufacturers. Mr. Speaker, to promote equity and fairness in taxation of accessible services offered through the internet or electronic network, the bill proposes to amend the Excise Duty Act to bring non-resident persons without a physical presence in Kenya into the tax net when they supply accessible services through these mediums. Mr. Speaker, to avoid double taxation of fees charged by digital lenders, the bill proposes to amend the definition of digital lender under the Excise Duty Act to exclude entities licensed under the Banking Act, the Cooperative Societies Act, and the Microfinance Act. Honorable members, to enhance clarity and consistency in the administration of excise duty legislation, the bill is proposing to amend the Excise Duty Act to clarify that imported plastic products, including plates, self-adhesive plastics, and printed polymers, will be subjected to excise duty at 25% of the excise value, or 200 per kilogram, whichever is higher. Now let me speak to miscellaneous fees and levies. Mr. Speaker, the Export and Investment Promotion Levy on billets and wire rods, which are raw materials in manufacture of nails, fencing wires, gabions, bolts, and nuts, have raised production costs of these products. In this respect, the bill proposes to amend the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act to review the levy downwards. Mr. Speaker, to promote Nairobi as regional aircraft maintenance hub while managing tax expenditures, the bill proposes to amend the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act to introduce import declaration fee and railway development levy on small aircrafts and helicopters, but retain the exemption on spare parts of all aircrafts. The Tax Procedures Act, 2015. No, the act is 2015. Mr. Speaker, to enhance the Commissioner's ability to recover unpaid taxes from non-residents, the bill is proposing to amend the Tax Procedures Act to expand the scope of agency notices to include non-resident persons. Mr. Speaker, and this is controversial, to close a loophole that hinders enforcement of tax compliance and ensure timely revenue collection, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to clarify that enforcement of tax collection when a tax appeals tribunal or a court judgment on tax dispute is in favor of the Commissioner shall only be suspended where a stay order has been granted. That is not the one that I thought I was going to read. The controversial one is yet to come. Mr. Speaker, to remove the financial and legal barriers that may hinder effective enforcement of recovery of unpaid taxes, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to provide that property transfers made by or to the Commissioner in recovery of tax liabilities be exempted from stamp duty. Mr. Speaker, to promote transparency, uphold fair administrative action, and strengthen trust in tax administration, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to require the Commissioner to provide reasons when issuing amended tax assessments to a taxpayer, so that we avoid misuse of Kenya Revenue Authority for political reasons, where they just sit and tell you that 3 years ago you did not pay such and such, and yet you had already been cleared for tax purposes. Reasons must be provided. Mr. Speaker, to address taxpayers' concerns regarding penalties and interest arising from system-related delays or administrative errors beyond taxpayers' control, the bill proposes to amend the Tax Procedures Act to allow the Cabinet Secretary to grant waivers on penalties and interest arising from such circumstances upon recommendation by the Commissioner. Presently, if there is any error made by the Kenya Revenue Authority on your tax assessment, there is no law to reverse it. So in conclusion, Mr. Speaker and fellow Kenyans, we have experienced a wide range of challenges as a nation in the past 2 years. In navigating these trying times, we have demonstrated exceptional resilience and remained steadfast in our development and democratic journey. Kenyans have demonstrated commendable patience and resilience as the government continues to fulfill its commitments to improve livelihoods through the implementation of better. And under the leadership of His Excellency the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, we have made meaningful progress in advancing our development agenda, promoting inclusion, fostering national unity, and working together to build our nation and renew the spirit of patriotism. Mr. Speaker, the budget I have presented today has been thoughtfully prepared to navigate the delicate balance of competing interests while adhering to our fiscal consolidation plan. Mr. Speaker, I am confident that the policies and structural reforms I have outlined provide a solid foundation for sustaining our socio-economic transformation. These measures are designed to stimulate job creation, strengthen our economic recovery, and ease the cost of living. I therefore call upon honorable members and all Kenyans to support the implementation of the budget as we work together in pursuit of shared prosperity. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the journey to a prosperous Kenya calls for leadership and collective commitment of all Kenyans. Last year, the Orange Democratic Movement joined hands with the United Democratic Alliance under Kenya Kwanza to form a broad-based government. This unity has brought renewed peace and stability to Kenya and fostered inclusive development beyond tribal lines. I wish Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I wish to acknowledge with gratitude the unwavering leadership and vision of His Excellency the President Dr. William Samoei Ruto and His Excellency the Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki. I also wish to recognize the invaluable efforts of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, the Attorney General, my fellow Cabinet Secretaries, Principal Secretaries, Accounting Officers, and all personnel across government ministries, departments, and agencies who have diligently contributed to the development of the financial year 2025-2026. Mr. Speaker, I want to sincerely thank Baba, Right Honorable Raila. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, Mr. Speaker, I sincerely thank Baba, Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, and the entire Orange Democratic Movement fraternity for their invaluable mentorship, as well as trusting me with party leadership positions in my political journey. But, Mr. Speaker, I will not forget that I served the people of Suba South constituency as their elected representative for a period of 15 years and a further 2 years as nominated member of parliament before my appointment to the cabinet. I truly appreciate the people of Suba South constituency for the opportunity they gave me to serve them, and I will remain forever grateful. In addition, I served in the leadership of parliament as a minority leader, and equally, I appreciate the support accorded to me by this House and its leadership during my tenure. My sincere appreciation goes first to you, Honorable Speaker of the National Assembly, and your counterparts in the Senate, the majority and minority leaders, and the entire House leadership, including respective clerks, supporting the approval process of the financial year 2025-2026 budget. Second, to honorable chairs and members of both the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the Finance and National Planning Committee and all the other departmental committees of this House, as well as the staff of Parliamentary Budget Office for their constructive inputs and leadership during the approval process of this budget. Third, my colleagues at the National Treasury and Economic Planning, led by Dr. Chris Kipto, the Principal Secretary for the National Treasury, Dr. Boniface Barasa Makoha, the Principal Secretary for the State Department for Economic Planning, and Mr. Cyril Wagunda Odede, the Principal Secretary for Public Investments and Assets Management, for their commitment, dedication, and support in the preparation of this budget. Fourth, special appreciation goes to Mr. James Muhati, the former Principal Secretary for the State Department for Economic Planning, for his unwavering commitment and invaluable support during the first half of the financial year. His dedication and strategic leadership greatly advanced the ministry's mandate and played a pivotal role in shaping key national economic planning initiatives. Fifth, my appreciation goes to the Governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, the Commissioner General of the Kenya Revenue Authority, as well as the management and staff of both institutions, the financial sector regulators, and other MDAs for their valuable contributions to the budget process. Sixth, my gratitude goes to our multilateral and bilateral development partners for their continued technical and financial support. Seventh, I also thank the private sector for their participation and contribution in the budget process. And eighth, I wish to appreciate the media and non-state actors for their active engagement and participation in the financial year 2025-2026 budget. Mr. Speaker, I forever remain indebted to my beloved wife, Madam Rhoda Mbadi, and my children, who is here in the Speaker's Gallery, and my children for their support and inspiration as I execute my duties at the National Treasury and Economic Planning. Their prayers and guidance gave me the zeal to proceed even during my lowest moments. I remain deeply grateful also to my siblings for raising me, paying my school fees, and supporting me throughout my journey. Mr. Speaker, I am sure that my late parents, Jadung Stanislaus Ngongomoth and his babe, Slermina Yambu Ngongo, with my mother, are smiling down from above as they see their youngest son perform this great service for the great people of Kenya today. God is truly faithful. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, my utmost gratitude goes to all Kenyans for their contributions during the budget process. Thank you, and may God bless Kenya. Mr. Speaker, before I resume my seat, you will recall that I have already submitted to this House the budget estimates and the Finance Bill 2025, together with the accompanying documents as required by the Public Finance Management Act 2012. Today, I further submit the following documents for this August House and request that you graciously receive them. 1, budget statement for the financial year 2025-26. 2, the 2025 budget policy statement. 3, estimates of revenue, grants and loans for the financial year 2025-2026. 4, financial statements for the financial year 2025-26. 5, medium-term debt management strategy 2025. 6, budget highlights, the Mwananchi guide for the financial year 2025-26. And finally, statistical annex to the budget statement for the financial year 2025-2026. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Minister. You may now take your seat. Thank you, CS, for just above 2 hours well spent in presenting your first budget highlights to this House. Honorable members, I wish to thank the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning for ably making a public pronouncement of the budget policy highlights and the revenue-raising measures of the budget policy highlights and the revenue-raising measures for the national government for the financial year 2025-2026 and the medium term. I confirm that in conformity with the provisions of Section 39 and 39A of the Public Finance Management Act, Cap 412A, and the Standing Order 244C, the Cabinet Secretary had already submitted to the National Assembly the relevant legislative proposals necessary to actualize the revenue-raising measures to finance the 2025-2026 budget. This has since culminated in the Finance Bill 2025, which is under consideration by this House. Honorable members, it's my pleasure to invite all members, the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury and Economic Planning, other Cabinet Secretaries, and all invited guests to a reception at the Parliamentary Courtyard. Honorable members, the time now being 5:23 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, 17th June 2025 at 2:30 p.m. I thank you.
That marks the climax of the budget highlights for the year 2025-2026 financial year, delivered by the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Honorable John Mbadi, highlighting a number of issues and a number of sectors that the government is keen on. To just take you through some of the areas that the CS for the National Treasury has highlighted is the aspect of Kenya being told it works on an realistic budget, and the CS says for the first time the country will be moving forward with a zero budget, where before the budget was allocated to various state departments, we had various state agencies as well as ministries appearing before Parliament to justify why those items should be factored in the budget to align the aspect of the allocation of budget and to streamline the allocation of funds. There has been monies allocated to the universal health care coverage and the affordable housing. And in a nutshell, the CS for the National Treasury says the government is committed to delivering a stable interest rate country where the interest rates are not staggering over and above to improve the economies of the business sector. Among the issues that the CS has highlighted that are set to streamline the business industry is the streamlining of the public procurement reforms. And rolling out of these public procurement reforms is by ensuring that the e-procurement system is up and running by July of this year. The public sector wage bill is also set to be reduced, with the priority being on development. On the issue of pending bills, 229 billion shillings have been recommended for settlements. This is pending cabinet approval. So that is some of the issues highlighted in this coming year, financial year. And so kindly allow me to hand over back to the Broadcasting House for more analysis on these budget estimates for the financial year 2025-2026. On behalf of the team that made this broadcast possible, allow me to thank you for watching and continue following us courtesy of our live platforms.
News will invest 2.5 billion shillings to boost agricultural funding for small and medium enterprises in Kenya. The fintech says that this will help boost funding to bridge the over 3.66 trillion shilling gap between agriculture's contribution to the economy and the credit it receives. Despite agriculture contributing 26% to Kenya's annual wealth and providing 1 in every 10 formal jobs, the sector currently receives only 3.53% of private sector credit, amounting to 134.2 billion shillings out of a 3.8 trillion lent to the private sector, according to data from the Central Bank of Kenya. Avenue's country manager Emmanuel Murai says the fintech will leverage technology to enhance access to credit.
Technology to manage loan portfolios and also to access the data in order to assess the risk more properly or more holistically, specifically for the agri-sector. We did work with the banks who licensed the technology from us.
Why do farmers go for expensive credit? It's because they have to wait longer to get paid. So first of all, how do you solve money getting faster to the farmer? So that now we are not plugging the issue of farmers getting expensive credit because of waiting for their money, but you're plugging the issue of farmers getting credit to increase produce.
Agri is a solution for rural development. Agri is an off-taker of the excess labor we have, and out of that we are going to have a shared prosperity across the country, and we will reduce these insecurities that come from people feeling disenfranchised, not having livelihoods.
I just made a $39 personalized storybook using AI in under 2 minutes. Let me show you how you can too.
Here's how it works. Just go to the AI Design Agent section and click on Personalized Storybook. You'll be asked to enter a few simple details: your child's name, age, the tone of the story, and how many pages you want the book to be. In seconds, it writes a complete, heartwarming story tailored just for them. Then comes the magic. Upload your child's photo, hit submit, and the AI doesn't just write the story, it creates stunning illustrations for every single page, placing your child as the hero of the adventure. Their face, their journey, their story. You can instantly turn it into a downloadable PDF, view it as a flipbook, or even give it as a gift. Want it in a different language? No problem. Want it to be a talking storybook? That's possible too. Everything is done for you, automatically. And that's just one feature. This AI can create coloring books, YouTube thumbnails, clip art packs, and so much more.
Click the link below to get instant access and grab the lifetime deal before it's gone.
All right, thank you so much for staying with the Monday Report. The town hall session begins right here live from the Salama Jamia Masjid Hall here in Kibra. This evening, we speak to the person in charge of Treasury, Honorable John Mbadi, the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury. Why? Because there's a 4.2 trillion shilling budget with an 876 billion deficit. Are we living beyond our means? But what is most important, what is in the budget for the common man? The Mwananchi is here tonight. We'll give them back the microphone so that they ask their leaders the questions in the best way they know how. We'd like you to also send in your questions at Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. It will be a bilingual session. To mix Sheng, Kizungu, Kiswahili, everything. But let me introduce my guests first, starting with Honorable John Mbadi, the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury. Thank you so much for making time, sir. Honorable Peter Ochieng Orero, Member of Parliament for Kibra, is here. Asante sana for making time. Honorable Ochieng Jera, MCA Lindi Ward, thank you very much for making time. And last but not least, Honorable Robert Alai, MCA for Kileleshwa, thank you very much for making time. Let's start off this conversation straight with Honorable Mbadi, and I'll ask you this. We're talking about a 4.2 trillion shilling budget, a revenue collection of about 2.4 trillion. Therefore, we have a 876 billion shilling deficit. Are we as Kenyans living beyond our means?
Thank you very much. Let me first of all break down the numbers for you, Trevor. We have a budget, yes, or a projected budget, which is before the National Assembly of 4,239 billion shillings. Out of that, we are projecting to collect revenue of 2,757 billion. That is from ordinary revenue. There is also a projection on other revenue or non-tax revenue, or if you like, a provision in aid, ministerial provision in aid of 560 billion. And then there is a projection that we will get grants. Grants are money funds that come from financiers from out there, but which is not refundable or paid back in terms of loans. So the grants is 46 billion. That gives you a total of 3,363 billion shillings. And that leaves you with a deficit, which is just the difference between expenditure and revenue projection. That gives you 876. And this we intend to fund by external borrowing of 284 billion. And that leaves you with 592 billion to borrow domestically. Now, going straight to address or answer your question, whether we are living beyond our means and whether this budget is very high. You know, there are two things to balance here. First, as a country, we have high debt stock and debt repayment or debt servicing costs. We spend over 1.3 trillion on debt servicing. But you cannot just service debts. Much as you want to control debts, you cannot service debts and you fail to provide services to the people. Because again, those who are giving you taxes to service your debts would also expect you to provide services. And you have to provide services in terms of education, in terms of health, in terms of water, in terms of road maintenance, and in terms of security and all that. So if you put this in totality, then our budget has to go up. The role of the national government and the role of the national treasury, for that matter, is to balance the two. Maintain a reasonable service delivery, at the same time controlling debt stock. So just to conclude, what is our strategy? Yes, we accept that as mistakes that were done previously, and it has brought us where we are very high debt stock level.
So the best approach is to persistently and continuously reduce budget deficit every year as a percentage of GDP. And I will just give you an example of what this government has done. Immediately this government came into office, the fiscal deficit to GDP was at 8.3%. 8.3%. That is 2020-2021. 2021-2022, that came down to 6.2%. 2022-2023, it came down to 5.6%. 23-24, it came down to 5.3%. This year, 2023-24, we are working around 5.1, 5.2. Now, the projection going to 2025-26 is that we manage the deficit at 4.5. How will that help us? If you reduce budget deficit to GDP ratio over a period of time, and we are projecting to have it at 2.7 in the medium term, in 3 years to come, then finally you will have a debt sustainability level that is desirable, which is the total debt to GDP of 55%. At the moment, we are still at 63%, but we are bringing it down. It was at 1.72%.
All right.
It has come down to 63. We want to take it to what is desirable, that is 55%.
We'll revisit the debt servicing for a bit, but the people sitting here are wondering,
yes,
in this 4.2 trillion budget of yours,
yes.
The Loop Squad is always there, with features like Loop Discover for deals, Loop Goals and Invest for savings, quick loans and overdrafts, plus Loop Flex for buying now and paying later, and so much more, all in one place. It's not an app. It's a lifestyle. Get your own Loop Squad today and simplify your life. Why wait? Loop it.
Ever felt like you'd run out of road? With the right fuel, you can go further. New and improved Shell Fuel Save now lasts up to 15 kilometers longer per tank, so you can drive further. Now that's truly better by far.
What's in it for them? What's in it for the common?
Thank you. I will address that. We say, and the saying goes, that a society, the strength of the society is determined by the way that society handles the weakest or the most weak in the society. And I think this venue, there could be no better or ideal venue in Nairobi than this. Because you'll agree with me that the challenges in Kibra is not the same as the challenges in Karen. It is different. So how we treat the law in the society is what matters. Now, this budget, and I want to demystify and explain that a lot